Under a Chicago park tree, a ragged girl whispered math to a billionaire's daughter, unaware her next lesson would unravel a man's heart and rewrite their futures. Emma crouched in the shadow of a dumpster in Chicago's Loop, her breath fogging in the early autumn chill. The alley smelled of stale coffee and motor oil, the kind of scent that clung to her torn hoodie like a second skin. At 14, she was small for her age, her dark hair tangled beneath a faded Cubs cap, but her eyes, sharp hazel and restless, scanned the street with the precision of a hawk. She clutched a plastic bag with a half-eaten apple, her only meal since yesterday. Beside her, her mother, Clara, mumbled to herself, her thin fingers tracing invisible shapes on the cracked pavement. Clara's scarf, once vibrant red, was now a dull, frayed thing, slipping off her shoulders. "The stars are singing again, Emma," she whispered, her voice brittle. Emma didn't look up. She'd learned to nod, to soothe, to keep her mother calm before the shouts came. Survival was a rhythm Emma knew by heart. Wake at dawn, scavenge for food, guide Clara to their spot near the subway station, and dodge the glares of passers-by who saw them as stains on the city's shine. But Emma's mind was a furnace, burning with fragments of knowledge she'd stolen from a world. She'd memorized multiplication tables from a discarded textbook, recited poetry overheard from a street busker, and pieced together algebra by eavesdropping near school fences. School was a dream she'd buried long ago, after her mother's illness stole their apartment and her father vanished without a trace. Yet, every night, under the flicker of a street lamp, Emma whispered equations to herself, as if numbers could rebuild the life she'd lost. Today, her stomach growled as she led Clara toward Grant Park. A school stood nearby, its stone walls gleaming under the morning sun, a world as distant as the stars her mother rambled about. Emma lingered near the iron fence, watching kids in crisp uniforms laugh and chatter. Her fingers tightened around Clara's arm, steadying her as she swayed. "Stay here, Mama," Emma murmured, settling her on a bench. A group of students passed, their backpacks heavy, with books Emma could only imagine touching. One girl, about her age, lagged behind, her face clouded with frustration as she stuffed a crumpled test into her bag. Emma's gaze lingered, not on the girl's designer coat, but on the way her shoulders slumped, mirroring a weight Emma knew too well. Across the city, in a glass-walled penthouse overlooking Lake Michigan, Daniel Harper stared at his reflection in a polished mirror. At 45, he was Chicago's tech titan, his name etched on skyscrapers and charity galas. His navy suit was tailored, his watch gleamed, but his jaw clenched as he adjusted his tie. The penthouse was silent, save for the hum of a smart home system he'd designed himself. Success had built this life, apps that billions used, deals that reshaped industries, but it couldn't fill the emptiness left by his ex-wife's departure 7 years ago. She'd taken half his heart and left him with Lily, their 12-year-old daughter, who now struggled in ways he couldn't fix. Daniel glanced at a framed photo on his desk. Lily at 10, smiling, before the divorce hardened her eyes. Her latest report card sat beside it, a row of CS and DS mocking his efforts. He'd hired tutors, enrolled her in Queen's Academy, the city's best private school, but nothing worked. "She's distracted," her teacher said, unmotivated. Daniel didn't know how to reach her. He'd built algorithms to predict human behavior, but couldn't predict his own daughter's heart. His phone buzzed, a board meeting reminder, but he ignored it, his thoughts on Lily's sullen breakfast that morning, her refusal to meet his eyes. He stepped onto his balcony, the wind carrying the city's pulse, horns, shouts, the distant rumble of the L train. Below, Chicago sprawled, a city of contrasts, gleaming towers and forgotten alleys. Daniel's wealth insulated him from the latter, but today he felt a crack in that armor. Lily's principal had called, suggesting a meeting about her disruptive behavior. He rubbed his temple, the weight of failure heavier than any deal he'd lost. He needed to pick her up from school, to try again, though he dreaded another silent car ride. Emma, meanwhile, spotted a discarded newspaper near the park bench. She smoothed it out, her eyes scanning headlines before landing on a math puzzle in the corner. Her lips moved silently, solving it in seconds. Clara stirred, muttering about angels in the clouds. Emma tucked the paper under her arm, her mind already wandering to the school across the street. She didn't know why she kept coming back, why she pressed her face to the fence to catch glimpses of chalkboards and open books. Maybe it was hope, stubborn and unyielding, whispering that one day she'd belong there. As Daniel grabbed his car keys, ready to face another tense afternoon with Lily, Emma guided Clara closer to the school's edge, unaware that their paths were about to collide. A girl's voice, sharp with frustration, carried from the park. "I hate math." Emma froze, her gaze locking on the girl from earlier, now sitting under a tree, her books scattered. Something in Emma stirred, not pity, but recognition. She took a step forward, her heart pounding, as if the universe had just whispered her name. What's a moment in your life when a stranger's kindness changed everything? Share in the comments. We'd love to hear your story. The Chicago park was a patchwork of fading sunlight and long shadows, the air thick with the scent of damp leaves and distant exhaust. Emma knelt under a sprawling oak, her fingers tracing numbers in the dirt, her voice barely above a whisper. "See, Lily, if you break the fraction down, it's just pieces fitting together, like a puzzle." Her cub's cap tilted as she glanced up, hazel eyes catching the last glint of dusk. Lily, 12, sat cross-legged, her Queen's Academy blazer crumpled beside her, a math worksheet crumpled tighter in her fist. "I don't get it," Lily muttered, her voice sharp but trembling. "I'm just stupid, okay?" Emma shook her head, her own hunger a dull ache she ignored. "You're not. You just need to see it different." She smoothed the dirt, sketching a new equation with a stick, her movements quick but gentle, like she was coaxing a scared animal. Lily leaned closer, her blonde ponytail falling over her shoulder, her eyes narrowing with a mix of doubt and hope. Emma's words were steady, patient, each explanation a lifeline thrown across the chasm of their worlds. For weeks, they'd met here, a secret pact born when Lily, storming out of school in tears, had spotted Emma lingering by the fence and begged for help. Emma, who'd never taught anyone but herself, said yes, not for money, but for the chance to touch the world she'd been locked out of. Across the park, Daniel Harper's sleek black SUV pulled up to Queen's Academy, its engine a low hum against the city's pulse. He stepped out, his polished loafers clicking on the pavement, his phone pressed to his ear. "Yes, I'll handle the board meeting tomorrow," he said, his voice clipped, eyes scanning for Lily. The principal's call about her latest failed test still burned. Another tutor, another disappointment. He spotted her under the tree, her books scattered, but froze when he saw the other figure. A girl, ragged, her hoodie torn, kneeling in the dirt, like it was a classroom. His jaw tightened. Who was this? Daniel strode closer, his shadow falling long across the grass. The air shifted, heavy with the weight of his presence. Emma's hand stilled mid-equation, her breath catching as she sensed him. Lily looked up, her face paling. "Dad?" she whispered, scrambling to her feet, the worksheet fluttering to the ground. Emma's heart thudded, her body tensing like a deer ready to bolt. She'd seen men like him before, sharp suits, sharper eyes, the kind who called the cops on people like her. Her fingers curled into the dirt, anchoring her, but her eyes darted to the path back, to Clara, her mother, still muttering on the bench. "Who are you?" Daniel's voice was low, controlled, but laced with suspicion. His gaze flicked over Emma's threadbare clothes, her chipped nails, the dirt smudged on her cheek. She stood slowly, her cap low, shielding her face. "Nobody, sir," she mumbled, her voice barely audible, her throat tight with fear. She wanted to run, to vanish into the city's alleys, but Lily's wide eyes held her in place. "She's helping me," Lily said, stepping forward, her voice shaking but defiant. "She's why I got AB on my last quiz." Daniel's brow furrowed, his phone still in hand, forgotten. "Helping you." He glanced at the dirt, the crude number scratched into it, and something flickered in his chest, disbelief, curiosity, a crack in his carefully built walls. Emma's hands trembled, but she didn't move, her gaze locked on the ground. She waited for the dismissal, the anger, the words she'd heard all her life. "Get out, you don't belong here." But Daniel's eyes lingered on the worksheet, Lily's neat answers in pencil, then back to Emma, whose silence screamed a story he couldn't yet read. "Show me," he said, his tone softer now, almost a challenge. Emma hesitated, her pulse racing. She glanced at Lily, who nodded, her eyes pleading. Emma knelt again, her stick tracing a new problem. 3x plus 5 is equal to 20. "You move the 5 first," she said, her voice steady despite the knot in her stomach, "then divide. It's like peeling an onion, layer by layer." Lily nodded, her face brightening, and Daniel watched, his breath catching as the homeless girl turned numbers into poetry. The moment hung heavy, charged with unspoken questions. Emma's fear clashed with her need to prove herself. Daniel's skepticism warred with the evidence before him. Lily stood between them, her hands clasped, a bridge across their divide. The park's sounds, distant traffic, a pigeon's flutter, faded, leaving only the scratch of Emma's stick, the weight of Daniel's stare, and the fragile hope in Lily's eyes. This was no longer just a lesson, it was a collision of worlds, a spark that would burn through their lives. Have you ever met someone who changed your perspective in a single moment? Share your story in the comments. The Chicago park was quiet now, the oak's leaves rustling faintly as dusk deepened into twilight. Emma's fingers still clutched the stick she'd used to trace equations, its splintered edge digging into her palm. Her heart hadn't stopped racing since Daniel Harper's voice cut through the air, his presence looming like a storm cloud. She stood frozen, her cub's cap pulled low, her eyes darting between Lily's pleading face and the billionaire's unreadable one. "I should go," Emma whispered, her voice barely carrying over the hum of distant traffic. She took a step back, her sneakers scuffing the dirt, her body screaming to flee to the safety of the alleys where no one asked questions. Lily grabbed her wrist, her grip surprisingly fierce for a girl who looked like she'd never known a hard day. "No, Emma, stay. Please." Her blue eyes were wide, glistening with something close to panic. "You're the only one who makes math make sense." Emma's chest tightened, torn between the warmth of Lily's trust and the cold fear of exposure. She glanced at Daniel, his tailored suit a stark contrast to the park's grit, his silence heavier than any shout. She knew men like him didn't let girls like her linger in their world. Daniel's jaw twitched, his mind wrestling with what he'd just seen. A homeless girl, filthy, out of place, had turned his daughter's frustration into clarity. It didn't add up. He'd spent thousands on tutors, therapists, private school fees, yet here was this nobody scratching numbers in the dirt like some street prophet. "This isn't a classroom," he said finally, his voice low but firm, each word measured like a contract clause. "Lily, get your things. We're going home." His tone left no room for argument, but his eyes lingered on Emma, searching as if she were a puzzle he couldn't solve. "But Dad," Lily's voice cracked, her hands balling into fists. "She's not hurting anyone. She's helping me. Why can't you just—" "Enough," Daniel cut her off, sharper than he meant. He rubbed his temple, the weight of the day, board meetings, Lily's failing grades, the principal's veiled threats about standards pressing down. He didn't need this complication, this girl who didn't belong. Yet the image of Lily's worksheet, her neat answers, gnawed at him. He turned to Emma, softening slightly. "You got a gift, kid, but this isn't how it works. You can't just show up here." Emma's throat burned, her worst fear spilling out in his words. She wasn't wanted, not here, not anywhere. Her fingers tightened around the stick until it snapped, the sound sharp in the quiet. "I didn't mean no trouble, sir," she mumbled, her voice thick with shame. She turned, ready to run, but Lily's hand still held her wrist, anchoring her. Emma's eyes flicked to her mother, Clara, on the bench across the park, rocking gently, oblivious to the scene. If she left now, she could get Clara back to their spot by the subway before the night chill set in. But leaving meant losing this fleeting taste of purpose, of being seen. Daniel saw the flicker of fear in Emma's eyes, and something stirred in him, a memory of his own childhood, of being dismissed, underestimated. He pushed it down, focusing on Lily's defiance. "We'll talk about this at home," he said, turning toward the SUV. But as he moved, his phone buzzed, a text from the principal. "Lily's behavior is becoming an issue. We need to discuss her influence on other students." Daniel's grip tightened, his knuckles whitening. Was this about the girl? Had someone else seen them? The school's reputation, his reputation, hung in the balance. "Dad, please," Lily said, her voice softer now, almost a whisper. "She's my friend." The word hit Daniel like a stone. Friend. Lily, who barely spoke to her classmates, who hid behind her phone at home, had a friend in this ragged girl. He looked at Emma again, her hunched shoulders, her trembling hands. She was a risk, a liability, yet Lily's eyes shone with a hope he hadn't seen in years. "I'm not your enemy," Daniel said to Emma, his voice quieter, almost gentle. "But this," he gestured to the dirt, the tree, the scattered books, "it's not sustainable. You understand that, right?" Emma nodded, her cap hiding her eyes, but her silence screamed defiance. She didn't trust him, and why should she? He was just another suit, another voice telling her to disappear. As Daniel led Lily toward the car, Emma slipped away, her sneakers silent on the grass. She reached Clara, kneeling to adjust her scarf, whispering, "It's okay, Mama, we're okay." But her chest ached, the weight of Daniel's words pressing down. She'd been foolish to think she could belong, even for a moment. Across the park, Daniel glanced back, catching the silhouette of the girl and her mother against the streetlights. He told himself it was over, a strange encounter, nothing more. But as Lily climbed into the SUV, her silence louder than any argument, he couldn't shake the image of Emma's numbers in the dirt or the way Lily's face had lit up. The city's pulse thrummed around them, horns blaring, lights flickering, as two worlds pulled apart, each fighting the pull of the other. Emma's fear told her to run. Daniel's logic told him to forget. But neither could, not entirely. The spark had ignited, and the flames were already spreading. When have you pushed someone away, only to realize they mattered more than you thought? Share your thoughts in the comments. The next morning, Chicago's skyline gleamed under a crisp September sun, but Emma felt none of its warmth. She huddled with Clara in their makeshift spot near the subway entrance, the concrete cold against her back, the air thick with the metallic tang of trains and unwashed bodies. Clara's mutterings were softer today, her eyes distant, but Emma's mind raced. She couldn't shake the billionaire's face. Daniel Harper, she'd learned his name from a quick glance at a newspaper headline about his tech empire. His words echoed, "This isn't how it works." She'd run last night, slipping into the shadows. But Lily's plea lingered like a bruise on her heart. "We should move, Mama," Emma whispered, adjusting Clara's scarf. "But where?" The park felt tainted now, exposed. At Queen's Academy, Lily sat in her first period math class, her pencil tapping restlessly on the desk. The room smelled of chalk and polished wood, a far cry from the park's earthy freedom. She'd barely slept, replaying the scene, her dad's stern face, Emma's fear. "Lily Harper?" The teacher's voice snapped her back. "Can you solve this?" Lily stared at the board, the equation blurring. Without Emma, it was just numbers again, mocking her. She shook her head, cheeks burning as classmates whispered. After class, she slipped into the library, the quiet stacks of refuge. She needed Emma, but how? Her phone buzzed, a text from her dad. "Focus today. We'll talk later." Lily's fingers hovered, then typed, "I need to see her again. Please." Daniel paced his penthouse office, the lake view a blur. He dropped Lily at school with a curt goodbye, her silence a wall between them. The principal's email burned in his inbox, concerns about unauthorized individuals near campus. "Security footage shows your daughter with a vagrant." His fist clenched. He dismissed it last night as a one-off. But Lily's progress was undeniable. That girl, Emma, Lily had called her, had unlocked something in his daughter that he couldn't. He dialed the principal. "Handle it discreetly," he said, "but find out who she is." By midday, a report landed. Emma Riley, 14, no fixed address, Mother Clara with untreated schizophrenia. Daniel's chest tightened. A life so fragile, yet she'd taught Lily with poise he envied. Lily couldn't wait. During lunch, she snuck out the back gate, her heart pounding as she headed to the park. "Emma," she called softly under the oak. No answer. Panic rose. Had she scared her away? Then a rustle. Emma emerged from behind a bush, Clara trailing behind, her eyes wary. "You shouldn't be here," Emma said, her voice low, glancing around. "Your dad." "He doesn't get it," Lily interrupted, her voice trembling. "But I need you. Please, just one more lesson." Emma hesitated, her fingers twisting her hoodie string. Clara swayed nearby, humming tunelessly. Lily's eyes pleaded, and something in Emma softened. The girl's loneliness mirrored her own. "Fine," Emma sighed, "but quick." They sat, Emma sketching in the dirt again, but tension hummed like electricity. Halfway through, footsteps crunched. Daniel, flanked by a school security guard. "Lily." His voice was sharp, but his eyes widened at Emma, then softened at Clara's frail form. "This ends now." "No." Lily stood, blocking Emma. "She's not hurting me. She's my friend." Daniel's face hardened, but the guard shifted awkwardly. "Sir, the principal wants her off grounds." External pressure mounted. The school's reputation, his control slipping. Yet seeing Emma shield Clara, her defiance masking fear, stirred him. "Wait," he said, waving the guard back. "Come with me. All of you." Emma froze, her pulse racing. "Why?" "Because," Daniel said, his voice dropping, "I can't let this go. Not yet." Circumstances bound them. Lily's plea, Clara's vulnerability, the school's threat. Reluctantly, Emma nodded, guiding Clara as they followed Daniel to his SUV. The leather seats smelled of luxury, alien to Emma's world. As they drove to his penthouse, temporary, he said, for discussion, Emma's fear clashed with a spark of hope. Forced together, their worlds collided, reluctant but inescapable. How has an unexpected encounter forced you to face something you were avoiding? Tell us in the comments. The library at Willowbrook Academy had become their fragile sanctuary, a cocoon of hushed whispers and forgotten tomes that smelled of aged paper and polished oak. Emma sat cross-legged on the worn carpet in the corner alcove, her fingers tracing patterns on the spine of a borrowed algebra book, while Lily hunched over her notebook, scribbling equations with newfound fervor. Daniel lingered nearby, pretending to check emails on his phone, but his eyes kept drifting to the girls. The air was thick with the scent of rain from the storm outside, pattering against the tall windows like impatient fingers. It started innocently enough. Lily, her cheeks flushed from solving a particularly tricky problem, looked up at Emma with wide-eyed admiration. "How do you know all this stuff? Like, really know it? I have tutors and stuff, but you're like a wizard or something." Emma's laugh was soft, almost self-deprecating, but it carried the weight of unspoken miles. She tucked a strand of her unkempt hair behind her ear, her nails bitten down to the quick. "Wizards have wands. I just listen. Watch. Remember." Her voice trailed off, and for a moment her gaze drifted to the window where the city lights blurred in the downpour. Daniel noticed how her shoulders tensed, as if bracing against an invisible wind. He cleared his throat, setting his phone aside. "Emma, you've been helping Lily for weeks now, but I don't know much about you. Where do you come from?" The question hung there, polite but probing, like a key turning in a rusty lock. Emma's eyes flickered with hesitation, her hands clenching the book tighter until her knuckles whitened. She glanced at Lily, who nodded encouragingly, her small hand reaching out to squeeze Emma's arm. "It's okay," Lily whispered. "Dad's not like the bad guys in stories. He's trying." The word trying echoed in Daniel's mind, a faint emotional ripple from his own buried failures. He leaned forward, his expensive watch catching the light, a stark contrast to Emma's threadbare sweater. "I'm not here to judge, Emma, just to understand." She took a deep breath, the air shuddering out like a confession. "My mom's sick, has been for years. It's her mind, you know? Sometimes she's there, singing old songs from when I was little, but mostly she's lost. We used to have a place, a tiny apartment in Englewood, but after Dad left, poof, Gone like smoke. We ended up on the streets. I was 9. School? I went for a bit, but then priorities, food, shelter, mom. Her voice cracked on the last word, Mama, and she whispered it again, softer, like a prayer. Mama needs me. Daniel felt a jolt, that single word, Mama, stirring something deep and dormant. It echoed the way his own ex-wife, Vanessa, had called her mother during late-night arguments before she packed her bags and vanished, leaving him with a toddler Lily and a heart armored in steel. He rubbed his temple, the memory flashing unbidden. Vanessa's tear-streaked face in their lakeside mansion screaming, "You don't know how to love anything but your empire." The divorce had been swift, brutal, leaving Lily caught in the crossfire, her grades plummeting as she internalized the abandonment. Lily's eyes widened. That's awful, Emma. My mom, she left too. When I was little. Dad says she needed space, but I think she just didn't want us anymore. Her voice was small, vulnerable, and she looked at Daniel with a mix of accusation and plea. Daniel shifted uncomfortably, the leather chair creaking under him. Lily, it's more complicated than that. But his words felt hollow even to him. He turned to Emma, compelled by some invisible thread. What about your father? Any idea where he went? Emma shook her head, reaching into her pocket to pull out a crumpled photo, its edges frayed from years of handling. She smoothed it out with trembling fingers, revealing a faded image of a young woman, her mother perhaps, with a man whose face was half-shadowed, holding a baby. This is all I have. Mom says he was a dreamer, always chasing big ideas. Tech stuff, I think, but he bailed when things got hard. Left us with nothing but this picture and a bunch of broken promises. As Emma handed the photo to Lily, Daniel leaned in, his breath catching. The man's silhouette, the faint outline of a jawline, it mirrored his own younger self in a way that sent ice through his veins. And there around the woman's neck, a locket he recognized, a silver piece with a swirling engraving, identical to one he'd given Vanessa on their anniversary. His hand froze mid-reach, the subtext screaming in the silence. Could be. No words were spoken, but the air thickened with unspoken significance, a mystery uncoiling like smoke. Lily gasped softly. She looks kinda like, never mind. She passed it to Daniel, who took it with fingers that barely hid their tremble. His mind raced, abandonment, tech dreams, the locket, pieces of a puzzle he hadn't known existed. Emma watched him, her eyes narrowing slightly, sensing the shift but not understanding it. Why do you keep it? Daniel asked, his voice rough, handing it back. The question was loaded, echoing his own regrets. Because it's proof, Emma replied, her gaze steady despite the sheen in her eyes. Proof that once someone loved us enough to smile, for a camera, even if it didn't last. The moments stretched, their past wounds laid bare like open books on the library table. Daniel felt the walls around his heart crack further, the emotional stakes rising. What if this girl, this brilliant stray, held a key to his own fractured history? Emma, sharing her pain, felt a tentative warmth. But the mystery gnawed, threatening to shatter the fragile trust they'd built. Outside, the rain intensified, drumming a rhythm that matched the pounding in Daniel's chest. For the first time in years, he wondered if love could bridge not just classes, but buried secrets too. The late afternoon sun spilled through the Harper penthouse's floor-to-ceiling windows, casting golden streaks across the sleek hardwood floors. Emma sat awkwardly on a plush leather couch, her hands folded tightly in her lap, the faint scent of lavender polish mingling with the nervous sweat on her palms. Across from her, Lily sprawled on a beanbag, her math textbook open, pages fluttering in the breeze from an open balcony door. Daniel stood at the kitchen island, slicing apples with a precision that betrayed his unease, the knife's soft thunk against the cutting board punctuating the quiet. They'd ended up here after another library session, when Lily insisted Emma come home to work on a science project together. Daniel had agreed, his voice gruff but his eyes softer than usual, as if testing some unspoken theory. Emma felt out of place, her scuffed sneakers a stark contrast to the pristine decor, but Lily's chatter about constellations kept her anchored. You ever look at the stars, Emma? Lily asked, her voice bright, pencil tapping the page. Like, really look? Emma's lips curved slightly, her gaze drifting to the balcony where Chicago's skyline shimmered. Yeah, sometimes. On the roof of this old shelter when Mom's asleep. Stars don't care if you're rich or poor, they just shine. Her words were soft, tinged with a longing that made Daniel pause mid-slice, the apple's crisp scent sharp in the air. He set down the knife, wiping his hands on a dish towel, and joined them, lowering himself onto the couch beside Emma. You sound like you've thought about that a lot, he said, his tone careful, like navigating a minefield. What do they make you think about? Emma hesitated, her fingers twisting the hem of her sweater, the fabric pilling under her touch. Escape, I guess. Like there's something bigger out there, waiting. But then I remember Mom, and I stay. Her voice cracked, and she looked away, embarrassed by the rawness. Lily slid closer, her small hand resting on Emma's knee. You're like Orion, you know? The hunter always fighting. But he's got stars to guide him. Maybe we're your stars. Her earnestness was disarming, and Emma's throat tightened, a lump forming she couldn't swallow. Daniel's chest ached at Lily's words, an emotional echo of the daughter he'd lost to his own distance. He cleared his throat, reaching for a plate of apple slices and passing it to Emma. Here, you need to eat something that's not library vending machine junk. His attempt at humor was clumsy, but his eyes held a warmth that made Emma's shoulders relax. She took a slice, biting into it slowly, the sweet tart juice bursting on her tongue. Thanks, she murmured, glancing at him. You didn't have to do this. Any of this. I wanted to, Daniel replied, surprising himself with the truth of it. He leaned back, the leather creaking softly. Lily's been happier these past weeks than I've seen her in years. That's because of you. His voice was low, almost confessional, and the room seemed to shrink around the weight of his words. Emma's cheeks warmed and used to praise. She's smart, you know. Just needed someone to believe in her. She looked at Lily, who beamed, and for a moment, the three of them felt like a unit, a fragile family stitched together by shared silences and small kindnesses. Lily hopped up, grabbing a marker and a whiteboard from the coffee table. Okay, Emma, teach Dad that trick you showed me, the one for quadratic equations. He's hopeless at math. She giggled, tossing the marker to Emma, who caught it with a startled laugh. Me? Hopeless? Daniel feigned offense, a rare playfulness softening his sharp features. All right, Professor Emma, let's see it. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, genuinely curious. Emma stood, her nerves fading as she sketched a parabola on the board, her strokes confident despite the tremble in her hands. It's about patterns, she explained, her voice steadying. You break it down like a puzzle. Look, x squared plus 4x plus 4. It's x plus 2 squared. See the shape? She drew it out, her eyes alight with the joy of teaching, the marker's squeak filling the room. Daniel followed along, nodding, his brow furrowing in concentration. Huh, that's actually clear. Vanessa, Lily's mom, used to say I overcomplicate things. Guess she was right. His smile faltered, the mention of his ex-wife slipping out unbidden, a crack in his armor. Emma caught it, her gaze softening. My mom used to say the same about my dad, said he'd build castles in his head but forget the foundation. She paused, the marker hovering. Guess we all overcomplicate, sometimes. The air held, a quiet intimacy, their shared losses weaving an invisible thread. Lily, sensing the shift, piped up, let's make a deal. No more overcomplicating. Just us, okay? She looked between them, her eyes bright with hope. Daniel met Emma's gaze, a silent agreement passing between them. Deal, he said, his voice thick. He handed Emma another apple slice, his fingers brushing hers, a gesture small but heavy with trust. For that golden hour, the penthouse felt like a home, not a fortress. The city hummed below, but up here, laughter and marker squeaks drowned out the noise. Yet, beneath the warmth, a shadow lingered. Their bond was real but untested, a delicate thread waiting for the world to pull. The air in Willowbrook Academy's administrative office was thick with the scent of polished mahogany and stale coffee, the kind that lingered in thermos mugs long past morning. Emma stood rigid near the door, her heart pounding like a trapped bird, her worn backpack slung over one shoulder. Across the room, Daniel sat in a stiff-backed chair, his jaw tight, while Lily fidgeted beside him, her eyes darting between her father and the school's headmaster, Mr. Caldwell, whose pinched expression screamed disapproval. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows on the oak panel walls. It had unraveled so quickly. A teacher, suspicious of Emma's frequent library visits, had tipped off Caldwell, who'd caught her slipping out of a study session with Lily. Now, the headmaster's voice cut through the tension like a blade. "Mr. Harper, this girl is not enrolled. She's been trespassing using school resources and, frankly, posing a liability. We can't have unauthorized individuals, especially someone in her condition, roaming campus." His lip curled slightly on condition, and Emma's cheeks burned, her fingers clutching the frayed strap of her bag. "She's not a liability," Lily snapped, her voice trembling but fierce. "She's my friend, and she's smarter than anyone here." Her small fists clenched, nails digging into her palms, leaving crescent-shaped marks. Daniel's hand shot up, silencing her, though his eyes stayed fixed on Caldwell. "Let's keep this civil. Emma's been helping Lily with her studies. Her grades are up highest in years. That's not nothing." His tone was measured, but the strain in his voice betrayed him, a crack in his usual control. Caldwell leaned forward, his glasses glinting. "Be that as it may, we have protocols, background checks, enrollment records. We don't even know her full name, let alone her legal status. And with all due respect, Mr. Harper, your generosity doesn't override policy." The subtext was clear. Emma didn't belong, and Daniel's influence wouldn't bend the rules. Emma's stomach churned, the room spinning slightly as she felt the weight of their stares. She wanted to speak, to defend herself, but her throat closed, memories of street taunts, filthy, worthless, flooding back. She glanced at Daniel, hoping for the warmth she'd seen in the penthouse, but his face was unreadable, his fingers drumming on the armrest. The silence screamed louder than words, and her hope shriveled. "Dad, say something." Lily's voice broke, her eyes brimming with tears. "You know Emma's not like that. You saw her. Tell them." Her plea hung in the air, raw and desperate. Daniel's jaw worked, his gaze flickering to Emma, then back to Caldwell. "I understand the need for rules, but there's got to be a way to work this out. A temporary pass, maybe while we figure things out." His words were diplomatic, but to Emma, they felt like a dodge, a refusal to fight for her. The man who'd sliced apples and laughed at her math tricks was retreating behind his billionaire armor. Caldwell shook his head. "I'm afraid that's not possible. We've already contacted security to ensure she leaves the premises. And, Mr. Harper, I suggest you reconsider your involvement. This could reflect poorly on the school and your reputation." The threat landed like a slap, and Daniel's shoulders stiffened, his silence deafening. Emma's heart sank, the betrayal slicing deeper than she'd expected. She'd let herself believe, just for a moment, that she belonged somewhere. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice barely audible, directed at Lily but meant for them all. She turned, her sneakers squeaking on the polished floor, and bolted for the door, the weight of her shame heavier than her bag. "Emma, wait!" Lily's cry followed, but Emma didn't stop, her vision blurring as she stumbled into the hallway, past students who stared and whispered. The school's pristine corridors felt like a maze, closing in, the air thick with the scent of floor wax and judgment. She ran until she reached the park, collapsing under their tree, its branches heavy with late summer leaves that rustled like mocking laughter. Back in the office, Lily rounded on Daniel, tears streaming down her face. "How could you just sit there? You let them treat her like garbage. You're supposed to fix things." Her words cut, each one a dagger into Daniel's guilt. He stood, his hands clenched, the memory of Emma's trembling fingers on that photo flashing in his mind. He'd hesitated, caught between his need for control and the fear of losing what little family he had left. "I didn't mean," he started, but Lily was already running after Emma. leaving him alone with Caldwell's smug satisfaction. Daniel's chest tightened, the room suffocating. He'd failed them both, Emma, with her fragile trust, and Lily, with her desperate hope. For the first time, he wondered if he was worthy of the love they'd started to offer. Emma curled against the tree's rough bark, her sobs muffled by her sleeve. The city's hum felt distant, her world reduced to the ache of rejection. She clutched her mother's photo, its edges cutting into her palm, and whispered, "Mama, I tried." The bond she'd dared to build was shattered, leaving her to question if she'd ever been more than a stray. Have you ever felt pushed away when you were trying to belong? Share your story in the comments. It might help someone feel less alone. The Chicago skyline glittered against the twilight, a mosaic of steel and light that felt a world away from the damp alley where Emma crouched beside her mother. The air smelled of rain-soaked asphalt and the faint tang of fried food from a nearby diner, the neon sign flickering like a heartbeat. Emma's fingers traced the crumpled photo in her pocket, her mother's shallow breaths a rhythm she clung to. The shelter's thin blanket draped over them both, rough against her skin, but it was all she had to offer. Her heart ached with the sting of Daniel's silence in that office. The way his hesitation had confirmed her deepest fear. She was disposable. "Mama," she whispered, brushing a strand of graying hair from her mother's face. "I thought maybe we'd found a place. But I was wrong." Her voice cracked, the words dissolving into the city's hum. She pictured Lily's tear-streaked face, her plea, "You're my friend," and the warmth of Daniel's penthouse, now a distant dream. Trust had been a gamble, and she'd lost. Yet, as her mother stirred, murmuring a fragment of an old lullaby, Emma's resolve wavered. Could she walk away from the only people who'd seen her really seen her? Miles away, in the sterile glow of his penthouse, Daniel stood alone on the balcony, the wind carrying the sharp bite of Lake Michigan. His phone lay untouched on the glass table, its screen dark, mirroring the emptiness in his chest. Lily had locked herself in her room, her muffled sobs cutting deeper than any boardroom defeat. He gripped the railing, the cold metal grounding him as he replayed the scene in Caldwell's office, Emma's trembling shoulders, Lily's accusation, his own cowardice. He'd let protocol and reputation choke his instinct to fight for her, and the cost was written in his daughter's silence. He sank into a chair, his fingers brushing a stray marker Lily had left behind, its cap still off, the ink staining his thumb blue. It was the same marker Emma had used to teach him quadratics, her eyes bright with purpose. The memory hit like a punch, echoing the photo she'd shown him, the locket that haunted his thoughts. Vanessa's locket. His past mistakes. He'd built an empire but lost a family, and now he was losing another chance. "I'm sorry," he whispered to the empty air, the words heavy with regret. Downstairs, Lily emerged, her eyes red but fierce. "Dad, you have to fix this. Emma's not just some kid. She's ours." Her voice trembled, but her words carried the weight of a truth Daniel couldn't ignore. He met her gaze, seeing Vanessa's fire in her, and something in him shifted, a choice forming in the quiet. Daniel grabbed his coat, his movements swift, driven. "Stay here, Lily. I'll bring her back." His voice was steady, a promise he meant to keep. He drove through the city, the streets slick with rain, until he reached the alley near the shelter where Emma had mentioned her mother. The neon diner sign cast a red glow, illuminating Emma's small figure curled against a wall, her mother asleep beside her. "Emma," he called softly, stepping out of the car, his shoes splashing in a puddle. She looked up, her eyes wary, the photo clutched like a shield. "I messed up," he said, his voice raw, unguarded. "I should have fought for you in that office. I let fear win. Fear of what people think, of losing control. But you're not a liability. You're a gift. To Lily, to me." He knelt, the wet pavement soaking his slacks, leveling their gazes. "Come back. Let me make this right. For you, for your mom." Emma's breath hitched, her fingers tightening around the photo. "Why should I believe you?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper, loaded with years of broken promises. "People like you don't keep strays like me." Daniel's throat tightened, her words echoing his own doubts about deserving love. Because I'm done running from what matters, he said. You and Lily, you're my chance to get it right. I want you to have a home, Emma, with us. His hand extended, open, vulnerable, a silent plea. Emma stared at him, the rain mingling with the tears she refused to let fall. Lily's words, "You're like Orion," echoed in her mind, a beacon in the dark. She glanced at her mother, then back at Daniel, his eyes steady despite the storm. The choice loomed: pride or trust, isolation or love. Her heart pounded, the weight of it almost too much. Lily's voice broke the silence, breathless from running. "Emma, please." She stood behind Daniel, soaked but determined. "We're your stars, remember? Stay." The word was a lifeline, an emotional echo of their bond under the park tree. Emma's resolve wavered, her hand trembling as she reached for Daniel's, her fingers brushing his, tentative but real. The choice wasn't final, but it was a step, fragile and full of hope. The rain had softened to a gentle drizzle by the time Daniel's car pulled up to the Harper penthouse, the city lights reflecting off the wet streets like scattered diamonds. Emma sat in the back seat, her hand still loosely clasped in Lily's, the warmth of that grip a tentative anchor against the storm of emotions swirling inside her. Her mother, bundled in a soft blanket Daniel had grabbed from the trunk, dozed fitfully beside her, her breath steadier now under the promise of proper care. The scent of wet earth and leather filled the car, mingling with the faint cologne Daniel wore, a reminder of the world she was stepping into, one that felt both foreign and faintly familiar. As they ascended in the elevator, its soft hum echoing the quiet between them, Emma's mind raced. Daniel's apology in the alley had cracked something open in her, a door she'd long kept bolted shut. But trust was fragile, like the photo in her pocket, worn but enduring. Lily squeezed her hand again, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "You're home now," she whispered, the word carrying the weight of a vow. Emma nodded, her throat tight, as the doors slid open to the penthouse, its warm light spilling out like an invitation. Daniel led the way, his steps purposeful but gentle. He guided Emma's mother to a guest room, where a private nurse he'd called en route was already waiting, her uniform crisp and her smile kind. "We'll get her the best care," Daniel said softly, watching as the nurse checked vitals, the beeps of a monitor a reassuring rhythm. Emma stood at the doorway, her fingers twisting the hem of her sweater, the fabric still damp from the rain. "Thank you," she murmured, her voice barely audible, but Daniel heard it, his nod a silent affirmation. Later, in the living room, the three of them gathered around the coffee table, the same one where Emma had taught math tricks just days ago. Daniel had ordered pizza, plain cheese for Emma, who confessed she'd never had it delivered hot, and the aroma of melted cheese and tomato sauce filled the air, comforting and ordinary. Lily Dove in first, her laughter bubbling as she handed Emma a slice. "See, no more cold sandwiches from the park," she said, her eyes sparkling. Emma took a bite, the flavors exploding on her tongue, warm and real. She looked at Daniel, who sat across from her, his posture relaxed for the first time she could remember. "Why me?" she asked, the question slipping out raw and honest. "You could help anyone. Why fight for a street kid like me?" Daniel set down his slice, his gaze steady, echoing the intensity of that first moment under the park tree. He leaned forward, his voice low and sincere. "Because you reminded me of what I'd been missing." Lily's smile, the real one, not the forced kind, she got that back because of you. "And me. I've built walls higher than this building, thinking success meant never needing anyone. But you, with your smarts and your heart, you cracked those walls. Your family, Emma, not because of pity, but because you belong." His words hung in the air, loaded with the subtext of his own redemption. The man who'd once abandoned vulnerability, now embracing it fully. Tears welled in Emma's eyes, but they were different now. Cleansing, not bitter. "I was scared," she admitted, her voice trembling. "Scared you'd see me as just another problem to fix. But you saw me, really saw me." She reached across the table, her hand finding his, the gesture an echo of their alley reconciliation, but stronger now, forged in choice. Lily beamed, wrapping her arms around Emma in a fierce hug. "We're sisters now. Officially." The word sisters resonated, a universal theme of love transcending blood, binding them in unexpected ways. In the days that followed, the transformation unfolded like a bloom after rain. Daniel navigated the legalities with quiet determination, adopting Emma and ensuring her mother's treatment at a top facility. Doctors marveled at her mother's progress, the fog lifting under medication and therapy, moments of clarity where she recognized Emma, whispering, "My smart girl." Emma enrolled at Willowbrook officially, her uniform crisp and her backpack new, but her brilliance unchanged. She and Lily walked the halls together, heads bent over books, their laughter a melody that turned heads. Daniel changed too, softer around the edges, attending school events and sharing dinners without the distraction of his phone. He even revisited that park tree one afternoon, the three of them picnicking under its branches. The leaves rustled softly, the air carrying the scent of fresh grass and freedom. Emma leaned against the trunk, whispering, "Family," the word an emotional echo of her street-side prayers, now answered in full. As the sun dipped low, painting the sky in hues of gold and pink, Emma looked at Daniel and Lily, her heart full. Love had come at last, unexpected and profound, proving that connections could heal even the deepest divides. She was no longer a homeless girl teaching in shadows. She was home, loved and ready to shine. What unexpected love has changed your life? Share in the comments. Your story could inspire hope in others.